Years ago, when I was still a teenager, my friend Justin and I would often go longboarding at night, as my friends and I were quite the night owls. We loved the freedom of almost never seeing another soul on the roads or the paths we frequented. Even when using main roads, it would be very rare to see a car out so late in such a rural area, and you could see and hear them coming from very far away due to their headlights and the noise of the vehicle disrupting the peaceful silence of the night. We were really into it at the time, and would often ride our boards for miles and miles, sometimes not arriving home until the sun was up. One particular night we decided to ride a few miles away from our usual back roads to take one of our favorite hidden routes. It began with a narrow paved path that was the only piece of land separating two sides of a long lake. It would often sink under due to rain, and we wanted to seize the opportunity to use it before it rained and went underwater again. It was roughly 2 miles long and was extremely relaxing to ride through due to the scenery. After making it to the end of the lake, we decided to continue moving and turn into a very close path that leads directly into a densely wooded wilderness preservation. As we came up to the first hill, we looked down at the bottom into the blackness. We both noticed what appeared to be a tiny moving ball of dim light down there. It moved so strangely, and it was extremely difficult to make out what it was. Rather than shine our flashlight down, we curiously watched it for a few moments, whispering to each other about what it could possibly be. All at once, that small light turned into multiple blinding lights and extremely loud revving sounds, overwhelming our senses that had become accustomed to the dark and silence. Acting purely on fear, we instantly turned around and ran as fast as we could, hearing yelling and revving gaining behind us. By sheer luck, we managed to run off path into a very dark, very overgrown hole in the side of a hill overlooking where we had just come from. We decided to hide in the natural dugout of this hill, hoping the plants and darkness would be enough to protect us from whatever was happening out there. We watched our pursuers ride up to where we had originally been standing. There were 4 men, 2 on 4-wheelers, and 2 on full-size motorcycles. They were yelling at each other about something, but we couldn't make out what they were saying due to the distance we had covered. We felt safe enough to whisper very softly to each other and speculated who these people could be. Our first thought was they might be park rangers of some kind, although we had never seen one here in the many times we had been through. And honestly, we doubted that this county had the budget or even the desire to have anyone patrol the deep woods at night. Besides that, these men were on vehicles entirely inappropriate for the paved bike trails, and they were very angry about something. They called out to us for a while, yelling things like, "We know you're out there," and "We can see you, come on out." We stayed silent and decided to call their bluff instead of running. Eventually, we clearly heard one of the men yell, "Find them now!" and smash a bottle. That had erased any hope we had that these were just park rangers. We watched them split up, each of them going a different way down the series of paths on their vehicles, including the path we came from. It took us what felt like ages to even move. We were frozen in terror inside that dugout, watching the lights from the vehicles travel through the woods and paths, one of them already coming full circle and passing the point he started from. I thought about calling for help, but I was too afraid to open my phone in fear that even the smallest amount of light would give away our location. After waiting for the lights of the vehicles to reach their farthest distance yet, we finally summoned the nerve to get up and try to run somewhere far enough from these people to safely make a call. We ran as hard and fast as we could through the woods. Since their headlights gave away their location on these paths, we would hide again whenever we felt they were getting too close. Our available hiding spots were getting progressively worse as the woods became less dense, and the fear I felt waiting for one of them to drive past us while basically only being covered in leaves and plants may still be unmatched to this day. Finally, we emerged from the woods onto the intersection of 2 main roads, far from where we started. We ducked down into the ditch to call for help. When I opened my phone, I noticed I had recent missed calls from one of our other friends, Connor, who we were supposed to meet up with after our longboard excursion. I called him and frantically asked where he was. Luck was with us again. He hadn't given up on our plans despite us ignoring him, and was only a few miles away, already heading in our direction. I gave him the names of the 2 streets we were near the corner of and explained that we needed to be picked up right away. He agreed to speed over to us while Justin and I waited in hiding. Thankfully, Connor arrived before any of those men did. We bolted into the back seats of his car, yelling for him to get out of there, and he took off. Relief doesn't begin to describe what I felt being safely driven home after everything I had just experienced. After explaining everything that happened to Connor, we ended up just moving on with our night and decided not to call the police. We figured they would be gone by the time any officer made it out there, and that we would only be putting ourselves at risk by admitting to breaking the law by taking those paths so late at night. I still have no idea what happened or who those people were. I've been told all kinds of theories from friends and family that have heard this story. Some think we walked right up to a huge drug deal. Justin and I later admitted to each other that when the revving started and we couldn't see, our minds both went straight to chainsaw-wielding horror movie serial killer. So I suppose it could have been much worse. Frustratingly enough, whatever those men thought we saw that made them want to catch us so badly, we never actually saw. And we'll never know who they were or what they were doing that night. In the early 80s, when I was 8, my family was visiting my uncle who lived in backwoods Missouri. He lived on a lot of land, and the only other people who really even lived on the street were relatives, so no one else ever just happened to be out there. This meant no one ever locked their doors, because random family members were always coming by for this or that. One night while we were there, my parents' aunt and uncle decided to go to a nearby town to go bowling. Because bowling. My brothers, who were 11 and 12, my female cousins, 6 and 14, and I, female, stayed home. It was still daylight when the adults left, but it started raining pretty hard and got dark quickly. We used to play this game that was essentially hide and seek in the dark house, but we cleverly called it vampire. There was a thin little mattress on the living room floor that some of the kids would sleep on at night, so the person who was it, the one searching, would lie on the mattress and fold it over themselves like a coffin and count down to midnight. When they got to midnight, they went looking for you. Again, all of the lights are off, and you tried to make it back to the coffin before you got caught. Because the house was in the country, it was pitch black at night. You couldn't see your hand in front of your face. What this meant for the game was 1. You couldn't tell where the vampire was looking, so you just had to make a break for it. And 2, if you were extremely lazy, and I'm sure by now you can guess which one of us met those standards, you could hide in the living room with the coffin and get to base quickly. Ben, my 11-year-old brother, was it, and was doing the normal countdown. I was hiding maybe 6 feet from him. As he's counting, there's a flash of lightning. I don't know if I was already looking at the living room window, or if the lightning made me look. But with the backlight of the lightning, I see a man with his face against the window. He had his hands on each side of his face, as if he's trying to peer in, and looks exactly like the stereotypical creepster. Heavy-set, scraggly beard. I could feel every hair on my body standing on end. Immediately, I began trying to convince myself that I didn't see what I clearly just saw. But then Ben sternly whispered, "If anyone is hiding in here, stay still." I sort of croaked out an "I'm here." Right as there was another flash of lightning, Creepster was still there, but was no longer trying to look in the window. Instead, he was now looking toward the front door. Ben and I immediately knew what was coming next. From where he was standing, Creepster was probably only 5 feet from the front door. Ben was the same distance, but there was a couch between him and the door. Ben leapt over the couch and locked the door, right as Creepster started trying the handle. At this point, I guess Ben decided that it was best to let Creepster know that people were home and that we knew he was there, because he flipped on the porch light and then started turning on the lights in the house. This is going to sound weird, but I was too terrified to panic. Having said that, I was relying completely on Ben to know and tell me what to do. He told me to go lock the other doors and was yelling for everyone else to come out and to lock all of the windows. As I was locking the side door, I saw a Creepster moving around to the back of the house, so Ben told me to hurry and lock the sliding glass door. Those doors are right around the corner from each other, so I was closest. As soon as I flipped the lock on the back door, the guy was standing there, just looking in at me. I just stood there for a couple of beats, looking at him. I was frozen when I hear Ben, in a very calm but firm voice, say, "Close the curtain. Listen to me, okay? Close the curtain." So I did. We tried to call the police, but my aunt and uncle had a stupid party line and it wouldn't work. whether from the storm or from a neighbor leaving it off the hook or whatever. For the record, they are the only people I've ever known with a party line, so this wasn't normal to me either. But for those of you who don't know what that is, in really rural areas, multiple people on the street would actually share a phone line. It would have different rings for different households, but you could pick up the phone and listen to your neighbor's conversation. We also tried to summon help on my uncle's CB radio, but couldn't reach anyone. My uncle was a hunter, so he had a gun rack full of rifles in his room, but my older cousin was on an out-of-town hunting trip and took them with him. All we could find was a BB gun that looked like a real rifle. I vividly remember Ben putting me on phone duty, and Scott, my older brother, on radio duty, while he stood watch at the little square window on the front door with the BB gun. Maybe 30 minutes later, Ben said, "He's back. He's coming up the driveway." The rest of us froze in fear, but Ben opened the front door and stepped out on the porch, pointed the gun, and said, "Get out of here right now." Then we hear our cousin Kyle, who lived down the road a bit, say,
"You know that's a BB gun, right?"
Even though Kyle was only 15, I remember that we felt like we had been saved when he showed up. Kyle seemed really skeptical of our story, like we were playing a trick on him, even though we had no idea that he was coming. But he stayed with us until our parents came home. Honestly, I don't remember if we even told our parents what happened when they got home. There was definitely no police involvement, though. We just went on with our trip. But we never played vampire again without some mention of that night. I have had the misfortune of coming across a few scary guys in my life. My friends will say I'm a weirdo magnet, so I'm pretty wary and clued up now I'm a bit older. But when I was a teenager, I suppose you could say I was very naive. Back when I was 20, my family and I, my mum and little sister, had moved from a small rural village in the Shires to a town down south. It was a huge change, and as I had been having a difficult time, I welcomed the change of scenery. It was a beautiful town in an affluent part of the country, but I struggled to find a job, and became very frustrated as my mom needed a bit of help with money. Over the course of about 3 months, we became fairly friendly with a middle-aged guy who owned a takeaway shop in town. I will call him Phil. Whenever he saw us doing some shopping, he would come and chat and ask how the family were, and he genuinely seemed like a decent, caring bloke. So when he said he might have a job for me in his shop with a small flat upstairs, I could rent for next to nothing. I thought, okay, great, maybe things are looking up. Phil got our address and told me and Mom he would pop by early evening time when he had finished, and take me in the car to go and see the flat. I get myself looking fairly casual, yet presentable, and I'm feeling excited and confident thinking, wow, a job and a flat, I've killed 2 birds with 1 stone here. I just need to show him I'm sophisticated and would make a great employee. Around 8 p.m., he knocks on the front door and Mom answers. He tells her we will probably only be about half an hour and he will have me back safe and sound in no time. Now I didn't take my phone with me as I had no credit to call out, and didn't think I would be needing it for a quick trip up the road and back. In hindsight, a pretty stupid thing to do. Maybe if I had my phone on me, would have deterred him from what he was about to do. It's already dark out as it's March. I get into his car, and we start driving, and he is chatting away asking how I am and telling me what the flat is like, when within a matter of a few minutes I've noticed that we are not taking the conventional route that takes us directly into town. At first I think he's taking me down some sort of shortcut round the town to get to it, and just reason with myself that he knows the area well and I don't. 30 seconds after I realize he is taking me in the completely opposite direction, and I can tell that we are driving away from the populated town and into an area where trees swamp both sides of the road. My brain is now working overtime, thinking where the heck is this guy taking me, and I just about manage to keep my composure, and I ask him outright, where are we going? Town's back the other way. Just thought I would take you on a little tour. It's beautiful here, many forests and peaceful places I would love to show you, he tells me in his normal cheery tone. I wasn't capable of saying anything at that moment because the logical and the reasoning sides of my brain were in a full-blown war. I'm trying to keep calm thinking, okay, he seems fairly normal. Why wouldn't he want to show me around? It is a stunning area full of natural beauty. He is probably proud to show me where he lives. The logical side, however, disagreed, and a wave of panic comes over me, and a little voice enters me head and shouts, "What? In the dark? Heck no." So I just sit there in silence, taking in the scenery, which is becoming more sinister by the second. At that moment in time, I didn't know what to think. All I know is every cell in my body is screaming at me to find a way out of this situation. I started looking for signposts. Houses, any distinctive landmarks, ditches, huge trees, anything that I would be able to use to recognize my way back if I had to bolt from his car. Phil can obviously sense I'm nervous, so is just talking away at me about what the job's like and how his staff are friendly. And before I know it, he has slowed down to a crawl, and he has turned down a little mud rut road with a dense tree line on one side and pitch black open fields on the other. My stomach literally drops, and my body contemplates power vomiting all over his car, because the reality of what is about to potentially happen hits me like a freight train. I'm thinking to myself, if I jump out here, I have to be able to run over muddy fields into literally nowhere. But my imagination starts rather helpfully flashing by images of him grabbing me before I get a chance to get out the door. So I just sit there buckled in the passenger seat, not saying a word. I'm just thinking to myself, if he attacks me, don't make a sound. Don't give him the satisfaction of showing him I'm scared. My brain was about as useful as a chocolate teapot, and I was starting to get angry with myself for not doing something. But I was terrified. We come out at the top of this little dirt road, and there is a tiny little car park surrounded by woods, with one car sat in it. It was clear there were people in there having sex, and as he pulls near the car, I realize he has brought me to a local dogging spot. He turns to me, puts his hand on my knee, and says, "We should do what they're doing," with a deadly serious expression on his face. I make this bizarre half-nervous laugh, half-garbled high-pitched whine, and try to laugh off the suggestion to show I'm not into it, and I'm super uncomfortable right now. The alarmed expression on his face at my gurgled cackle, which sounds like I've swallowed a potato whole, clearly freaks him out, and I'm mentally congratulating myself for my socially awkward and grossly unsexy reaction. "It will be fun. No one will see us," he persists. "No, I don't want to. Plus, I'm kind of seeing someone right now," which was a lie. But he sits there just smiling at me like a Cheshire cat, like I'm going to miraculously change my mind at the sight of his weird face. "Mom will be expecting me home soon," I tell him after an insanely uncomfortable 30 seconds more of this as I try my damn hardest not to make eye contact. "I'm sure she won't mind you being out a bit longer with me. You can trust me, you know," he tells me with a straight face as we sit next to the sex wagon parked next to us. I sharply pull my leg away from his grip and I tell him again, "Mom is waiting for me. She will start panicking if I'm not home in the next few minutes. Take me home." I look him straight in the face, and he knows that I'm not messing around. "Okay, that's fine. I'll take you back now." Without another word, he drives me out of that creepy, seedy place and back home. My finger is hovering over the seatbelt button, ready to jump out. As we pull up outside our home, I breathe a sigh of relief as I can see my safety literally a few feet away, and before he can stop me, I'm out and slam the door behind me. As I'm stepping over a tiny little rope fence round our garden, he gets out of his car, and my heart sinks. "I think I'll pop in and see your mum quickly," he tells me, and I swear I can see a smirk on his face, but I know he is only doing this because he's freaking out, knowing damn well I'm going to tell her. He was trying to delay the inevitable or scare me into keeping my mouth shut. Before I can try and talk him out of it, Mom has heard us pull up and open the front door. I barge past her with one thought on my mind. I head straight into the kitchen, grab a small knife out of the drawer, and fly into my little sister's room like a mad woman. "Don't you dare effing leave this room, no matter what you hear," I whisper to her. Seeing the knife I'm stuffing up my sleeve, she just looks at me with panic in her eyes and whispers back, "Okay." I walk back into a living room and the cheeky twat is sat on one sofa, sprawled out comfortable as heck, like he is at home. I see red, swear to God, I felt like the Hulk. I'm ready for the bastard. I awkwardly perch myself on the arm of the sofa Mom is sitting on, the absolute furthest away from him I can manage, as he just sits there making small talk with Mom about how is she finding the area. Are the neighbors friendly all the while keeping his beady little weasel eyes on my every move? "Why don't you come and sit over here next to me?" He pats the sofa cushion next to him. "No, I'm all right here, thanks," I tell him as I'm fidgeting with my sleeve trying to stop the little knife from falling out in front of him. "Why are you sad over there? Come here. Honestly, I won't bite." He laughs and pats the seat next to him again. "No, I am quite comfortable here. Thank you very much." this time through gritted teeth. My mom, bless her, is looking at each of us during this back and forth like a tennis match, and I can see something is registering in her eyes. She can see my behavior is all off. I've got one bum cheek weirdly perched on the sofa arm, so I'm half stood up, half sat down, and I'm fiddling about with my sleeve. I'm twitchy as hell and staring my mom in the face intensely, mentally trying to speak to her through the power of telepathy alone. I must have looked like a nutter. It's getting late now, so I think you should go. She finally speaks. Mom is starting to look anxious now as she had finally twigged that something has happened. Phil gets up, agrees, and mumbles something about having to check something at his shop. When he walks by me and is nearly out the room when he pauses and turns to me and puts out his hand to shake mine. I'm thinking to myself what a weird effing thing to do. I take the opportunity to kindly offer him my hand that had the knife. Taking it with a bit more force than is polite, he soon yanked his grubby mitt out of mine when the tip of the blade had jabbed him. He looked down and saw the blade. Then he looked at me. I looked at him with such disgust. Phil hightailed it out of our home so fast without another word. A prick for a prick. I told Mom everything. She was fuming. We did discuss going to the police, but there wasn't really a crime committed on his part aside from being a major creep. Sadly, when I mentioned to a couple of girls my age who lived down our street, they clammed up and shot each other a strange look. I guessed he had probably done this type of thing before. We moved away from the area after that, so glad to report I never have to see his smug face ever again.
Don't skip this.